On October 27th of 2024, on NPR's Up Front, this appeared about the situation in Sudan. It was called Sudan's Forgotten War. Quote, 20 million displaced, as many as 150,000 dead, half the country facing starvation. The simple truth, war is tearing apart Sudan. NPR's West Africa correspondent Emmanuel Akinwotu recently reported near the heart of that fighting. Along the way, he met a young man who, with his family, survived for months on flour and water while hiding under a bed. He found doctors caring for the sick and dying, even as shells exploded nearby. The current humanitarian crisis in Sudan is seen as one of the worst in the world, but has little global attention. They forgot us, one exhausted doctor said. It's a forgotten war, unquote. The situation in Sudan is obviously horrendous, and the reality there needs to be known by the world community. We'll do a small part of that work today with the second part of an interview with Khalid Sidahmed. Sidahmed is a trade unionist currently living in Britain and a leading member of the organization MENA Solidarity Network. That's the Middle East North Africa Solidarity Network. The MENA Solidarity Network's website is MENASolidarityNetwork.com, and is a wealth of information on actions, especially with trade unionists in the MENA region. Actually, the MENA Solidarity Network had a webinar about a week ago specifically on Sudan. One of the participants said something that hit home to me. The horrors of Sudan, or Gaza, or the Congo, or Haiti, or so many other places are all part of the normalization of crises and despair and the seemingly uninterrupted decline in social life we see around us. But this process of normalization is not just one of moral concern. It is a political normalization caused by very real people. And this process of those behind the throne of devastation is the topic of our interview today. Khalid Sidahmed discusses these forces and how they work in today's Sudan. This discussion was first heard on Hudson Mohawk Magazine Radio in Troy, New York, and was produced by Lennox Apudo. After the interview, stick around for a couple of selections of traditional Sudanese music that we got from Internet Archive. Now on to the interview.
June 18, the Times Union reported that the Sudanese government accused the United Arab Emirates of fueling the 14-month war in Sudan by providing weapons to rival paramilitary forces. Despite cries from Sudanese people for the two generals at the center of this conflict to stop the war, it continues unabated. Currently, the Rapid Support Forces control much of West Sudan and is reported to being armed by the United Arab Emirates. The Sudanese armed forces control much of South Sudan and are being armed with drones and weapons by Iran. In this second segment, we talk about how outside influence from Qatar, the European Union, Russia, Ukraine, Iran, and the United Arab Emirates is perpetuating the war in Sudan in an effort to secure their interests at the expense of the Sudanese people. We'll be speaking with Khalid Sidahmed, an anti-war campaigner and a member of the editorial board of the Middle East and North Africa Solidarity Network, MENA Solidarity, based in England. He's also a trade unionist, a member of the Portsmouth Trades Council, and the Equality Officer of Unite the Union, the second largest trade union in the United Kingdom. Welcome to the show, Khalid.
Thank you, Lennox. Thank you for having me.
So could we start by talking about the gold trade in Sudan and how this has drawn interest from Qatar and Russia, and in addition, Ukraine, because Russia is, Ukraine has been dragged into it because Russia is involved. And how does this contribute to the fighting?
So I think for this question, it's important we understand we establish that Sudan is a major gold producer and ranking the third in Africa. However, the problem lies in who benefit from this resource. And during the past 30 years, and still going on, the revenue from the gold doesn't reach the Sudanese people, but instead it goes to Hemeti and the rest to the army. So both the army and Hemeti are in control of the gold market and mining, as they own they own the mines and they control that business and the resource. But both sides, they smuggle the gold to the UAE and the militia to Russia. We also have, if you look at the UAE itself, it's a desert, and that country just doesn't have any mined gold itself, but somehow become a global gold trade hub, selling about 20 to 25% of the gold traded worldwide. As for Russia, it has actively been involved in Sudan's gold sector since 2014, following its invasion of Crimea and the subsequent Western sanctions. So smuggled Sudanese gold shipments allowed Russia to accumulate wealth while bypassing the international financial monitoring systems and potentially covering the expenses of the war in Ukraine, which cost them huge amount of money. In exchange of Sudan's smuggled gold, both Russia and the UAE, they continue to provide the militia with military training, equipments, and technology. And both, they support the militia to secure the gold supply. So the winning of the militia is crucial for them. But as for Qatar, the Sudanese army approached Qatar, I think around a couple of months ago, and agreed to build a gold refinery in the Qatari capital Doha to handle Sudan's gold exports. The purpose of this is to cut off the militia's gold supply route from the UAE to Qatar, hoping that UAE will stop supporting the militia. In terms of Ukraine isn't directly involved in the war, but there have been a couple of reported drone attacks by Ukraine that allegedly hit Russian targets in Sudan, and the existence of Wagner in Sudan as well, which is evident. Mm-hmm. We also have Iran and Saudi Arabia involved in the war, backing the warring sides. But in general, the international imperialist capitalist powers, including UK, Israel, and the US, continue to arm their regional proxies. When I say regional proxies, I mean the Gulf countries, Egypt, Israel, and those they cascade and they supply both sides with arms in the Sudanese war.
And Khalid, now to talk about, some European Union states such as Italy and Turkey have been documented to have provided drones and other weapons to the RSF. And other countries like France, Italy, the UK, and Spain have helped them with intelligence. And, that would make anyone wonder, why would EU member states support militia, a militia that's known to have committed repeated genocides in Sudan?
It's as always, their hands are full of blood. And it is a shocking news to that may be new to many of our listeners. The EU countries, including the United Kingdom, they worked closely with Omar al-Bashir while they were saying that we don't have ties with that terrorist regime. They worked closely with him, and they paid the Sudanese government to create the militia, which we have now, the Rapid Support Militia. And then at that time, it began as a militia, and then later became the border guards. And then after that, they were promoted to become the Rapid Support Forces to kind of give them a legitimate kind of view and to look legitimate. They even, by the constitution, Omar al-Bashir made them part of the Sudanese army. Now the question, why did they do that? So the answer is to stop the illegal immigration, or the so-called illegal immigration from Africa to precious Europe. And unfortunately, their interests still exist. And this whole deal and initiative is still detailed in something called the Khartoum process, which originally called the EU and Horn of Africa Migration Route Initiative.
And I mean, migration is such a contentious issue. I mean, I know in the UK you're having elections soon, maybe next month. I'm not sure. And I know one of the top issues that is being hotly contested is immigration. I mean, the thing that I do wish is that, like there would be a broader conversation on what is exactly making people migrate. And then I think that with that question, it would shift the perspectives of a lot of people because then they would realize, like you're saying, we live in an imperialist capitalist system that's making life really hard for the majority of people living in this planet. And so my last question is there any hope for lasting peace in Sudan?
Well, I think let's begin by with saying that the war in Sudan is fundamentally about control over the nation's wealth and governance. And the Sudanese army dominate more than 87% of Sudan's economy. And the rapid support forces or militia, they possess significant wealth, including the gold-rich Jabal Amir, which is a mountain of gold. And both factions, and this is the main bit, both factions are enemies of the People's Revolution, which seeks civilian rule and the removal of the military control over the country's resources. And this is something they're not giving up easily. We have to fight for it. And this is something that has been building up for so many years. As I mentioned earlier, how the army became powerful and involved with politics. But personally, I think currently I can't see any signs of a lasting peace because it's evident that the decision to end the war is no longer solely in the hands of the army and the militia leaders, meaning Al-Burhan and Hemeti. There is another significant influence, which is the influence of the war, which comes from members of the Islamic movement and the dissolved National Congress Party, who have a strong presence within and allied with the army. And they do have their own militias like Al-Bara ibn Malik and other militias. They're fighting on the ground. They bring them on the TV and state propaganda for them. And for these groups, ending the war without achieving the victory they're seeking, this is another defeat will be for them, for their authoritarian ambitions, and making it difficult for them to accept peaceful negotiations. So this is a decisive war for them.
حبيبة ساهية وأفكاري بعيدة سارحة مالك يا حبيبة ساهية وأفكاري بعيدة بجرى في عيوني حياتي وعاملة مشغولة بجريدة تجري فيه كلميني يا سلام مهتم عاملة يعني لازم تجري هسه مقال بحاله قصة كاملة بتجري فيه كلميني يا سلام عاملة يعني لازم تجري هسه مقال بحاله قصة كاملة كم شهور مرت علينا وبيننا بعض وفرقة شاملة العيون رويانة تبكي والقلوب مشتاقة آملة قصة أو أخبار جديدة عندي ليك خبر أهم جايبه بأشواق شديدة اسمعي ومر بخاطري قصة أو أخبار جديدة عندي ليك خبر أهم جايبه بأشواق شديدة أسمعي وطاعيني مرة.
That was a piece of traditional Sudanese music with Mohammed El Amin. The next is with Mohammed El Awek. Both of them are from a selection of Sudanese music called Nostalgic for a Place Never Been, which can be found at Internet Archive.
حلوة مستنيها الأمل والسلوى زمان راييها خجلانة في خدودك بانت ازدهار ألوانة لسان طاويها لما يوم قلتيها زمان راييها مرساها في حياك ولوعة المتيك برعاها تخافي عليها كلمة لي قلتيها كلمة لي قلتيها الأمل والسلوى
Sudan is a story of tragedy and resistance, and I hope we provided some context for you today. We would like again to thank the Hudson Mohawk Magazine Radio in Troy, New York, where the interview with Khalid Sidahmed was originally broadcast. We'd also like to thank Lennox Apudo for permission to use the three-part interview. We'd like to recommend anyone interested in freedom struggles in the MENA region, especially those covering trade union issues, to check out the website of the MENA Solidarity Network at MENASolidarityNetwork.com. Well, that was part 2 of the 3-part interview with Khalid Sidahmed, and we hope you get a chance to hear the rest of his description of what's happening in Sudan. Anyway, thanks for joining us today. I'm Wayne Heimbach.